our kind of experimentation for the day. And I forgot your name again.
I'm Adam.
Adam.
Yes.
Adam is going to help us on the piano as needed. So let's talk about the other instruments of the praise team. You all have praise teams? Yeah? No? Ish? All right, we'll get you working here. So either you have a praise team, or you hope to have a praise team, or you're here because you hate praise teams. And no, I don't know exactly why you'd be here if you didn't want one. But you know that generally speaking, a praise team is going to be a combination of maybe a couple singers, but really the kind of the guts of the praise team, what makes it sound, is going to be guitar and piano, bass and drums, and they generally are matched out like that. I should probably say that I have a book called The Art of Worship. It will change your life for the better. But I talk about a lot of these things in that book. So if you want to follow up this session by reading, that would be a good place to go. The Art of Worship. And I talk about the musical makeup of a praise team in that book. And so the basics of what you have there, piano and guitar are your kind of middle harmony instruments, and then bass and drums are there. And they generally, I kind of think of it as a pyramid, and you could have, in that center part of the pyramid, you could have just guitar, so you could have drums, bass, and guitar filling out this range, or you could have drums, bass, and piano. It'd be very hard to have bass but no drums, drums but no bass, right? And then often, so those are kind of working in tandem, and then your piano and guitar kind of work in tandem in the sense that you might have, if you have both, you might have one song where the piano leads, one song where the guitar leads, like kind of takes the primary motivator of the harmonic stuff. But that's your kind of band that happens when you do praise music. But many of us, if we're in a local church situation, if you are, David Crowder, I'm in Waco, so I'm using him as an example. If you're David Crowder, you might have just the rhythm section. But if you are a person in a local church, you're probably going to have other options. And I don't know about you, but I often get into the situation where I have a flutist who comes to me and says, I would really like to play flute with the praise team. And the standard answer is no. Flutes don't play with praise teams, or they don't play with rock bands unless they're Jethro Tull, right? I mean, you have these odd, violinists or whoever. You have these instruments that play with rock bands. I mean, praise music is essentially pop music for church, right? So we need to understand that it's based on pop music, and you can see that in the pages in the handout that I use a lot of examples from pop music for different instruments. So the standard rock band is bass, drums, guitar, maybe piano, and then one singer is real standard. So the church differs a little bit because they usually have more singers. And I talk about that in the book, what kinds of choices you can make on how many singers you have. But what we're going to be focusing on today is what do you do with those extra instruments? And over the years, I've incorporated, flute, violin, string quartet, accordion, mandolin, erhu, I guess it's pronounced. You know what? Yeah. So I'm kind of a geek on this, right? Like I figure if there's you come to me and you say I play bassoon and I want to take part in things, I'm going to find some way to incorporate you. So my hope is that by the time we get done with today's talk, that you're going to have an idea of how you can be a little bit more inclusive of the instruments that you have in your church. And that's my first point is use people that God gives you. Too often we say, what I really want is a bass player for my praise band. And I totally understand. Like, I don't think it's is it the Jimmy Fallon his band that has the tuba as the bass player, right? Yeah. Roots, is it? Yeah, so, that can work, but it's probably not gonna work in your church. Your tubist probably doesn't do that. Although it's a great sound, like in a lot of Hispanic music, just turn on the radio someday and then you hear it and you realize, that's actually a tuba that's doing that great bass line. And then I, as a bass player, started thinking, how can I make it sound more tuba-like? So there are all sorts of things that you could do, but most likely you're not going to make substitutions on that level. Some comes to you with a bassoon, you're probably not going to swap them out for a bass. But my real point is this. Too often we are longing for one thing when God gives us another thing, right? So figure out, and this might mean just make a different ensemble, but figure out how you take the people that God has put in your church and make the most of them. In my church, for example, we had a couple of ensembles that really required a high level of musicianship. If a clarinet player said, I'm going to play in your group, then that person knew that they needed to be able to sight read and they needed to be able to transpose to B-flat clarinet on the spot. I mean, that was kind of the way it went. And I realized that was great. It made it easier for me to be able to just hand people music and say, play the tenor line an octave up in C, right? But that was not going to be a possibility for most people, many people that were available. And what I found, there were a lot of middle-aged men who played guitar, who were not the top-level player who could be handed a piece in E-flat and would know how to capo it and record it. But they could play pretty well. And so I created in my church a guitar orchestra, which is about a dozen guitars, a couple mandolins, an accordion, string bass, So now that's kind of out of the scope of this talk, but that's what I'm getting at is, in my particular situation, I had people that were available that were being unused, and I figured out how to use them. We're talking specifically about praise team in this one, but start with the basic principle: use who God gives you. Second basic principle: don't let the instruments draw attention to themselves. The point of what we do in church is not to have the rockin'est band, the most innovative band. The point is to help people sing, and we always have to come back to that. I almost guarantee you that I'm more of a geek than you are on this stuff. I just love trying out new things. I love new songs. I love new sounds. I'm just always geeking out on stuff. But I always have to remind myself, let the people sing. If I have this great electric guitar solo and the people sit there and watch it, then I've failed. I've not done the right thing, right? So figure out how to do all the stuff that we're talking about. Is not, how can I have a bigger, flashier praise team, with string quartet along with it. I mean, that's awesome if you have a string quartet, use them. But the goal is not to make a really cool sound with string quartet and sound like, whatever. It's to help people to sing. So always keep that in mind. Find creative ways to bring contemporary and traditional musicians together. And this is where a lot of this work is done, and I think is really becomes important. In terms of how a church functions as a community and how you function pastorally as a leader in a church. This is where it differs from a standard music ensemble. We are trying to do pastoral work and communal work. And so one of the things that you can do, the more musical knowledge that you have, the more able that you're going to be able to do pastoral work. So for example, if you have a praise band, a choir, and a pipe organ, there's no reason that they have to have exclusive territories in the service. And it depends on the organist to a great extent. I've done this a lot, it depends, some organists you say, can you just give me, just a sustained, flute stop using the chords, and they're like, I don't read chords, which I think is kind of funny, you don't read chords, how long have you been playing? But depending on who it is, most organists will be able to do that for you, and you can work with them on the sounds that they have. And then you basically think, okay, what I really want is a Hammond B3, but instead I've got a pipe organ, I'm going to use it in a similar kind of way. And an organist, I'm sorry, I know that was sacrilege, what I just said right there. But the same basic idea. You have a sustained line that fills in the sound, and it can be very, very beautiful. And, it's wonderful to, or you could pass off the praise team plays a, part of a hymn, and then the organ takes the fourth verse or something like that. And it's just this great moment when you kind of have this handoff of the musical material in the congregation. First of all, it can be a very breathtaking moment, just like when something goes a cappella, or the band comes in, or the beat drops, whatever it is. It can be a breathtaking moment musically, but it can also be this really wonderful moment of like, hey, they're sharing, right? So it's not, okay, praise band did their praise set, and now the organist leads that hymn, and then they're gonna, that kind of thing. So it's a way of bringing people together. So all of these people, it's a flute, it's a bassoon, it's a pipe organ, whatever it is. There are ways to bring the people together so that you're kind of weaving all of the instruments into the same service, the same fabric, the same community, and it has a completely different feel. And now it feels like you're all from one church, and I think it's a really good thing. Practical thing: make a file of all your arrangements. I'll just tell you how I do it. I create a manila folder for every song that essentially every song that we've done. Well, once again, I'm a total geek on this stuff. I have one for hymns, I have one for praise song, little song, folk song kinds of things, and I have one for each psalm. And here's how I use those. With the hymns, they tend to have specific kinds of resources: descants, choral arrangements, reharmonizations, different sets of words, things like that. And I think that what you want to do is, anytime I come across those, let's say it's an anthem, it maybe doesn't light a fire under me, but I say it's a pretty decent anthem. I just stick it in the Be Thou My Vision folder, and then if I decide that I'm going to do a hymn of the month type of thing where I want multiple arrangements of something, or I'm doing Be Thou My Vision, I can take out that folder and I can say, oh, I could adapt this choral anthem. It's got a really great accompaniment. Why don't I take that and I can use that? So that's how I use the hymns. Psalms, every time I come across a psalm setting, we do psalms every week, so I put those in the 1 to 150 folders. For the other kinds of songs, I put any kinds of resources I have. If I have made capo chords for a particular praise song, I put it in there just so I don't have to do it again. Any arrangement that I do, any arrangement that I find, different piano accompaniments from different books, and I just fill out what I have. And so the point is that, don't do stuff twice and have a big bag of tricks. You want to, it's really served me well. I'm a little bit ADHD, and so I usually do too much work when I'm in a particular church, but then I am really happy the next time I go to a church, I have all of this stuff ready to go. You say, oh, we're going to do that song, I pull it out, and I start leaping through it, and I say, yes, we do have a descant for that one. And so, anyways, just that would be my encouragement, is to keep all the stuff that you do in whatever file system you find useful. And then also don't let your file system overtake you, right? You don't need to make a database of that. Just stick it in the folder and be done with it. All right. Now, how do you do this? Let's say you have a flute comes to you and says, I want to play with the praise team. And you probably have heard this before. And usually what happens, the problem is people don't know how to talk to the flute player, and because they're used to working with the band, and they're, truth be told, people in the band need different things than singers, and need different things than flutists. And so most of the time you're just hanging out trying to make sure that your band gets a particular groove, that they know what the introduction is, that, all those kinds of things, so that the thing doesn't fall apart, right? You've been there. So you're really concentrating on, the bass and the drum are just, one swinging it, one straight, and how am I going to get them on the same page on this thing? And then you're just going to say, okay, to the flute player, just play, right? and that's exactly what they do. And they're going to do one of two things. If they're an inexperienced flute player, they're going to play the melody, because you've given them music, you've given them a lead sheet, and they say, I know notes, and I know I can play that melody. And they've got like two options, at pitch or an octave up, right? That's about all they're going to be able to figure out. Or you say, just improvise something. And so then you end up with the classic young person's improvisation my one son is in jazz band, plays in jazz band, so I see all these really bad improvisations. I'm like, are you gonna hang on that note for the whole song? So it's something like, you know, right? And it's like a drill to the ear ball after a while. So we want to be able to talk to our musicians and give them some ideas about what they could do and kind of prepare ahead of time so they can succeed. And that's one of the things you really want to be careful of, especially with younger players. You don't want to bring them into your group and have them fail. All right, because a failure early on means that they are not going to want to play again. They're going to have that bad experience like the kid that's been told by the teacher that they can't sing, they're never going to sing again, right? So you want to have, and I often will say, I'm going to have you play on one song, and we're going to work on it, and we're going to make sure it really goes well. And they have a great experience, and they gain confidence, they want to do more, they practice more, it's a good thing. So what can you do? Single instruments as opposed to married instruments. Seriously, folks. If you have a single instrument, what do you do with that instrument? Here are some really simple things that you can do. Double the melody line. Now I've just told you how that could be the kiss of death. But I'm going to tell you how you can use that well, because the reality is you do have just lead sheets or something very simple music. And you typically don't, especially with the praise team. If you have music at all, it's not going to be something with a flute line for it. So, use what you've got, and that might be just a melody line. Now, I think, all right, let me see what I've actually said before I say what I think I'm going to say. Yep. Okay, good. Yeah, don't overuse. So this is what I'm getting at. The don't overuse thing. There's a great line in Harry Nilsson's The Point. If you have never seen that, it's a kid's cartoon thing, and it's awesome. Harry Nilsson, who wrote One Is the Loneliest Number, right? He wrote this children's thing, and it's kind of, I think, the same illustrator as the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. I'm throwing in that for free, okay? The point. There's a great line that says, a point in every direction is the same as no point at all. And it's really true. If you do the same thing over and over again, you basically consign yourself to the background, all right? So if you play the melody, the flute plays a melody on every single verse, you might as well just be done with the flute, because now you don't hear it at all, right? So the flute is there, or is potentially there to provide some textural interest. But now you've used it repetitively in a doubling of what the people are already doing, so now it's boring. And it's not only boring, there's no point at all, right? So what you want to do is figure out, how can I use that flute in a strategic way with just a melody line? So what you want to think about, I fairly rarely have a flute play along with the congregation, or I use that very sparingly. Some ways that I will do it is, a big way would be for an introduction. You're going to introduce a song. Most praise bands, if your pianist is your kind of leader, then they play the melody all the time. And it drives me nuts. After a while, you've heard that melody. The piano is just not very good at melodies. I mean, sorry pianists, I'm sure you have a wonderful touch and very melodic feel, but it's not a melodic instrument. It's a percussive instrument. And so, and if you do choirs, you should know that don't have your pianos play all the time, because people learn to sing with an attack but no sustain. So a flute is a great opportunity to have a human-like sound. So now, I told Adam that I'm the world's worst pianist, and it's probably only partially true. But anyways, I'm gonna mess up, but bear with me. So if you do, that's fine. But if you have the flute going, now you have a sustained instrument that sounds voice-like, and it also draws attention to itself. You hear the flute, and you say, oh, what's that? It's the melody, right? So now your ear, your congregation, no longer has to pick it out of the fabric of all of those percussive notes. They hear it just like it is. So I had Adam play the whole song. This is a new song, so my go-to thing would be to play this for you the whole song as an introduction. It's short and it bears, full introduction. So that would be one way to do it. You can have double the melody line, say a chorus where you want a little bit more vibrancy. So you're taking the structure of the song. So say it's a verse and a chorus, and you have the chorus played by the flute. Now you're basically saying, we're going to expand our instrumental palette when we get to the chorus, because choruses are generally going to be more exciting and interesting. So you put the flute up an octave, and then now it really pops right there. But then I wouldn't have them come back and play the verse, because once again, then it starts to get boring. Tags, let's see. All right, come on up, Adam. Let's get a real pianist on this thing. All right, so I'm going to make you guys be. I'm going to make you guys be the flute, unless anybody has like a flute or a violin or something like that. No. No one's that geeky to travel with. I just feel uncomfortable without my violin. So we're all just going to sing it on new or whatever. Let's see what I want you to do. Oh, yeah. That's exactly what I want you to do. What we're going to do, Adam, is we are going to tag each verse. We'll sing, come in, at the end of the verse we'll sing, come and feed our hearts, O Lord, and then you'll play, so what we're going to do is, this half is going to be the singers, this half are going to be the flutists, and did you hear what I said to Adam? We're going to tag it, so let's go ahead and sing it right from the top. Bum is our note, oh, bum, like I was saying, that's our note, 3, and feed us, chance to breathe. We let the flute take over that one place, and now it's doing something that's pivotal and structural. It's getting us, and this is how music works, right? One of the problems that a lot of traditional musicians have is that they're used to doing hymns, and they start here, and they end here, and they hold this note, and then they stop, and then they go again, right? Ba-da-da-da-da-dum-bum. Pop music never does that. It never does that. There's no retard at the end of the beat except for the very end of the song, and it always stays in time. What you do is what's called a turnaround. Would be a turnaround. That would be a simple turnaround. You might have dum, ticka-gum, do-gum, gum, dum, right? I'm a bass player, so I'm like, there we go. So it always stays in time, and you always fill that with something. So think about any pop song. It might be a little guitar solo right there. It might be the singer going, "Oh yeah, baby," right? It could be all sorts of things. But there's going to be a little filler. The beat keeps going, and then you go back to the top again. So what I did is only with the material that we have on the page, just a lead sheet, I was able to take that, and you saw how quickly it went with Adam, right? And if he worked with me on my praise team, then he would understand that when I laid out the instructions in my kind of roadmap, I would say, tag it after each verse. And he would know that that means that he's going to do ba-da-da-da-da-da. And so I do a lot of that kind of thing. So put the flute on there, and now you have something that sounds kind of interesting. They've just got done singing, and then they sing again. And we've created this kind of, we trade it off. And that's what music does. All right, why don't you just stay there, Adam, and we're just going to keep working here. Double the harmony line. All right, so this is back there on the first page. Another thing you can do is double the harmony line. Now, if you're doing a hymn, this is really easy because it's usually written out in 4 parts. But if the writing is good in a piano accompaniment, then there are going to be a fairly clear 4 parts in there. And so then you can start to take Let's see, I say that and then I'm going, oh, is this good? Where is that line? So what I would do probably is I would take a red pen and I would start circling notes. So let's see. Yeah, sure, I'll do that, why not? You see on Fetus Lord, the fourth eighth note in the left hand crosses into the right hand, right? That's C. And then you see the B flat a beat later. And a C. Like, what if we took that? That might work. And then basically I circle those notes and I say make half notes out of those. So where's my C? All right, so I'm going to circle the C on the first set of chords, B flat on the second, on Os, and then on Lord I'm going to circle the C again, and then this is going to be fun. Yeah, I'll just do it that way, and then we'll do the same thing in the next verse. So this is going to be super boring, but it gives you an idea of how to do it. So let's do. This half is going to do Fetus Lord, sing fairly lightly. This half is going to go. Okay, 2, 3, and. Yeah, and so you circle notes and you get, this is not a particularly good example of that, but it gets you started with the basic idea. And you can fairly easily, even with a young player, you could circle this and say, each one of these is going to be a half note, right? And just do it on the, and now young players are used to having things fed to them, right? So if they're a band player, they're going to play more in flats. If they're a string player, they're going to play more in sharps, and they're going to freak out if you give them the other one, right? So there's a little bit of that going on. Heaven forbid if you have an E-flat alto saxophone, because they're always playing in something way too sharp. Especially with a praise band, you give them something in the key of E and it's in the key of C sharp, and they're like, no! You might have some problems communicating with them, but if you're clear about it, it's a whole lot better than just handing them a big pack of music and say, play something, right? So now, that's the way to do it. If you have distinct alto, tenor lines, those kinds of things, then you can use those. Yeah, that's what we could do. That would be fun. Yeah. No. No, I don't like the lines on this, so I'm not gonna do that. But you know what we'll do? This will be fun. We're gonna do something interesting. All right, we're gonna just make a little bit more out of this arrangement with the double the harmony line. So what we're going to do is this. Take the same phrase. We're going to do our circled C, B flat, C. And then what we're going to do is, in the second measure, third beat, we're going to jump to the alto line that is the E, F, G, A, B flat, C. So, all right, let's give that a try. So you guys were the flutes the last time? Mm-hmm. All right, so you guys are the flutes now, and you're gonna sing. So yeah, try it. We'll get it. Imagine it being circled. Is your note 3 and 4. And I just make a line around it and I say play that. All right? So there are all sorts of things like that you can do that's already in the music, and it's just an economy of music. Now, if you were an orchestrator, you would be doing a very similar thing. That's what orchestration is. You double lines. You use orchestration. You use instruments to bring out particular lines or create different fabrics on different sounds on different lines. And so that's exactly what would happen if you were orchestrating this for real. So then you can just do it on the fly and kind of make something of it. Especially if it's a good arrangement, then you could really capitalize on that and make it work.
How do you, if you just have a chord sheet for a certain song. I have a violin player and a cello player who also plays drums, but the violin player is a high school player who only reads like notes on the page.
Yeah.
And so some of the songs I just have a chord sheet for, and so he's kind of left to just playing, whatever the chord progression is, which is kind of boring.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't have a melody.
Yeah. All right, well, this is one reason why I prefer lead sheets, is for that very reason. I worked in a church, I was on sabbatical in a church that did just chord sheets, and I found it really annoying because as a bass player, like I can read just about anything. But then instead I was spending like an hour or two listening to YouTube videos trying to figure out where the bass line was, like what is that? Is this chord right? Is it inverted the right way? All that kind of stuff. So I'll just tell you what I do. I have finale, and I do a lot of finaleing of songs. One of the things that's good about that is that, I'm telling you about this bag of tricks. Once you've finaleed something, you've got it, right? And you've got it electronically, you can transpose it wherever you need to go, all that kind of thing. So that's what I tend to do, because I want to manipulate it the way I want to manipulate it. I want my chords, I want guitar capoed chords, I might want a 4-part harmony for my choir, and then just over the years, I open up that file and I say, okay, I've got those things. Oh, I forgot that I wrote that kind of snazzy choral outro for this thing. So unfortunately, some of the answer is time, right? And what you might think about doing is saying, okay, I've only got time to do one this week, or one every week. And, so there'll be a new lead sheet, and that's the one that we're going to really focus on for the violin. And then he or she just kind of meanders the rest of the time. And you just, work slowly. You'll kill yourself if you try to do all the songs in finale each week.
We'll do 6 a week, so no.
Yeah, I know. And I'm a finale jockey, but I don't have that much time and patience to spend on finale. We go till 10:15? All right, good.
There's a website called Praise Charts.
Yeah.
No,
And
that's what I go through, but there's some of
they're
our,
actually fixing to add orchestrations.
there's some of our older songs that don't have a lead sheet for it. It's just simply the chords.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to find one. And
So-
sometimes we do different keys as well.
Praise Charts is one. CCLI has their song select. Sometimes those are a little bit wonky, the arrangements. The other one is hymnary.org has flex scores, and so those you can buy. I think it's $2 per instrument or $10 for the whole arrangement. So I actually have done that with full orchestrations. I've used those. I buy the $10 version, and I can get a group of 20 or 30 people playing on a Sunday morning. Good. So double harmony lines, we're just using at this point things that are already there in the music. Now, another thing that you could do is you could do sustain notes. And when you're trying to work with this, there are all sorts of things you can do, and I will show you some of them. So let's assume that you want to write something out for your musician, and you have the ability, and we're talking about finale, and that is great. You can do it in finale, but can you see this at all? People have been writing music on chalkboards, for example, for many years, and so there's no reason why you can't do it this way. I think I have enough lines for this one now, right? I'm going to bind it to another, so just so you can see where the melody is, and we'll just, okay. Isn't this great? Does it remind you of music theory class? Yeah, is anybody like getting cold sweats or anything? So we have F, D flat, I'm going to put it in the right key. Bam, si, fa, si, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And our melody is bum, blah, blah. So an F chord, let's, just for fun, we will take it down from an F. We know what F has an F chord. What else does it have? Now, how about our B flat chord? Let's just start here for the sake of the argument. Where B flat, and what else? D. Very nice. Let's go for starting an E right here, and then what do we got?
C. G.
Oh, actually, no, you don't. We have a because it's a sus. Naughty, naughty class, and now we resolve it here. Okay. So this is just, basic. I mean, you guys are saying this along with me. It's not rocket science. If you know how to play an instrument, you probably know enough about chords to know this. So now, what if you were to take a, just write this out for someone. And let's just take this for fun. We bind these together. Where's my F again? Let's have just a little bit of the class here singing the melody. The rest of you singing the. It's a nice new harmony that we've created. Here we go. 2, 3, and. Right? So it's not rocket science, but it sounds kind of nice. And if you were to add something to that, let's see. Yeah. All right, now, this is fun. Sure, let's do that. Pick a note, any note. No one sings the melody because Adam's got that covered. You're either singing bum bum bum, sorry, bum 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 right there, and take it and then just sing it. And here we go, 3 and 4. So basically now you just went from having a flute player to a flute trio, right? It was as easy as that. Now, I make a point here, instruments, on the single instrument, when I say instruments don't have to repeat notes like singers do. Similar idea, so, and that means, if you were to look at Feed Me Lord, the pick up into the second system. Often that sounds kind of jerky on a violin, so I'll have them go. Right, so just remember that. They don't have to follow, it just sounds kind of weird when you get right, and it just, that kind of thing. I can't think of a song right now, so I just made up something that sounds like a mariachi song. So now, I took just basic knowledge of theory, and now I have 3 parts. If I wanted to, let's say those are strings, and then I want to just put a bass note on the bottom. F, D, C. Now I've got a string quartet. Easy as that. But let's so now I'm taking the basic principle of you can usually bind things together to make them more sustained. So I bound this one already. This one is bound, and now that one's bound. So then you create whole notes out of that one, and it's super easy. Now, if we want to move to the next section, descants. There are all sorts of things that you can do for descants. It's kind of a whole subject in itself, but I'll give you some hints. You might want to do something like it's just a little doodad. One of the things I say on the descant part, always find the hole and fill it. Move. Right? So don't interfere with this. This is maybe not the best example of this, but there are melodies that are really that move quite a lot. Fill in the holes there, right? So don't do it here where the melody is moving and you want to make sure that the ear is drawn to the shape of that melody. Do it here where nothing is happening. I guess this is actually, this is what I'm doing. Or no. Whatever. But you get the point. So it's just kind of adding a little doodad there. And your descants then can begin to move from there. I'm trying to think of if I have some decent examples that can be. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm transposing from D, but this is fun. So just the problem with chalkboard as opposed to finale. So standard go to the so this is same basic shape. You're still just going F to E, but you're just adding little notes, passing notes. Let's give that a try. Let's all sing that together. Right? Is it my F? 2, 3, and. Let's try that one more time because this is still a half note. That's why you messed it up. Let's try it again. 3 and 4. It's the same basic thing, it's just an F hanging over to an E, but we've added a little bit of interest to it, all right? And so, even if you don't think of yourself as a composer, then you can begin to write some of these things, just kind of connecting the dots. You know where the dots are, and then you start to connect them, and you get something a little bit more interesting. And you can also have your instrumentalists do this. So what we want to do is we want to encourage our instrumentalists to grow, right? So and this is a basic principle. We don't want to use people, we want to utilize them, right? We want to grow them. So if you just say, okay, you're a great clarinet player, come on in and play and get the job done and then go, that does get the job done. But what we really want is, okay, you're a great clarinet player, come in with a middle-of-the-road flute player. Let's have you sit together and work through some stuff and have you help each other. So that 5 years from now, that flute player is a better flute player for us. So one of the things you can do is, as you work on these descants, even if you don't think of yourself as an arranger, as you work with some basic principles like this to create lines, you take that flute player alongside you, show what you're doing, that you're connecting the dots, and you say, now, I connected the dots for you this week. Next time we play it, you're going to take out this paper again and you're going to write your own descant that embellishes it a little bit. And then you listen to it and you say, yeah, that works, that doesn't work, that kind of thing. All right. So we got 15 minutes more. Good. Anybody have any questions yet as we turn to the next page? It's making sense? I mean, this is, it's very simple stuff. What I have found in my ministry is that, we were talking about CCLI and all those kinds of things. There are lots of arrangements available, and if you're a pianist, that, okay, I like this book of arrangements of hymns, I don't like that book. But you're one person who's playing the stuff. Now, the difference is if you're a music director, finding stuff for your instrumentalists, how wisely you choose determines how successful it sounds. And so it's a way of heightening the sound of worship, involving more people, growing more people, and those kinds of things. And really it's determined not by their talent or your talent, but your skill in choosing the appropriate music or preparing the appropriate music for them. And that's, it's kind of a boring thing in some ways. It's not like, I could teach you a flashy conducting move. Actually, it would be kind of silly to teach you flashy. Like, what would that do? Kick out your right foot. So that's going to have more bang for the buck when you are, in performance, people are gonna be like, wow, flashy conductor. So this is, really kind of boring stuff in a way, because it's all behind the scenes. But this is what is gonna make for a successful worship service. If you can appropriately choose the music for your people, do some simple arrangements that get the job done, it's really gonna change the way you do worship. Now, this is so much fun. Yes, all right, so let's look at some particular instruments and see how we work with them. Strings, there are two ways to do strings. Let's assume you have SATB, and that is maybe a big assumption. The assumption is based in part on the bulk of material you have in your hymnal already that's in SATB. The number of arrangements of praise songs that have been retooled for SATB, some of them it works just fine, like There Is a Redeemer, that kind of song, is going to work just fine in 4 parts. Some you can find the 4 parts within the arrangement, so you have to, or you might need to make the 4 parts. But in any case, once you start with that basic SATB, if you can do a decent SATB arrangement or find a decent SATB arrangement, now you're on your way. So then you can start assigning notes in a way that really makes sense. So we have closed voicing for strings. If you are blessed with a string quartet, you would put your violin 1, standard would be violin 1 on soprano, violin 2 on alto, viola on tenor, and cello on bass. And then your string bass usually is called a double bass because it doubles the cello. It's usually going to double the cello an octave down. Be aware that it's going to add a lot of weight to the sound, so sometimes it's going to be a little overwhelming. You might want to save the bass for choruses, for example. So that's closed voicing, and that's going to have a nice kind of mellow sound, but it's not going to cut through very much. If you want more of a sound like a Haydn, Mozart kind of sound, then you open them up into open voicing. And so then you can see in the open voicing, what you do is you basically accordion it. The cello stays as is. You might add the bass down below. The violin 1 goes up an octave. Then you take these 2 instruments, you flip them, so that basically you're stacking it in 6s rather than 3rds. All right? It creates that open sound that's a real, this is why when you hear Haydn Symphony, it just sounds so bright and kind of effervescent. It's because of that space between the notes. Oh, look at those examples, man. So I won't play these right now, but there are lots of good examples of how you can do that. Now, what I call the Hollywood voicing, you hear this in movies all the time. This is a real standard kind of Broadway and Hollywood go-to kind of thing. You would write a descant. Let's take this descant for an example, and you put them up in a screaming range. Okay, you would put the violins up an octave, right? And you can do it a couple ways. You can have them all in unison with your cello way up there. My cellos hate this. I actually have some really good cellos, and then I'm like, no, I actually meant the A for cello. I actually meant that. And they're like, no, and they're like way up here. But it's what gives it this really intense sound. And so if we had this, if you have your cello's playing in the snow up here, and your violins are all way up, if you have the people to do it, right? It's going to create this sound that's just really intense, and you're going to instantly say, that's the sound that I've heard in movies and in Broadway kinds of things. So yeah, and I give a couple. What other session are you going to go to that mentions Sister Sledge? Right? See, this is like bonus material for you right here. So those are some ways that you can approach strings in particular. If you have brass, then you have some other things that you can do. For church brass, standard church brass, you're going to double the SATB lines, and it's going to sound great. Brass have a lot of clarity to them, and so you don't need to put them up in the stratosphere. If you have a full congregation, the strings at a closed voicing level are not gonna cut through, but brass will, all right? Now, once again, be careful, some of the things that you need to know about brass. Strings can play all day. They might not be happy about it, but they can do it. But brass, you don't play them all the time. Yeah, so any brass players know. The lips turn to water, and there's just, that you're done. And especially if you're in a church, you're often working with people who don't practice all the time. So what I do is I'm very intentional about where my brass are going to play, how much they're going to play, what do brass players play, how much, how much of the lips on the instrument, something to that effect. Basically, it's just sustain time. If you have them do a whole chorus or a whole length of a song, their lips are starting to get tired. It's like sprinting, all right? You can sprint for a while, but you can't sprint forever, right? So kind of decide, I can't have them in the stratosphere forever, for sure, but I probably don't want them doing multiple verses of the same hymn. And not only because it's tiring for them, because it's tiring for the ear, all right? So have them do a big fanfare based on the hymn or the praise song, and then the band comes in, and then they come back on the last verse, or they play every chorus, or they play the Alleluias back and forth in a song, if there's kind of an antiphonal Alleluia. Find a way to break it up for them, and to make it so they don't become overbearing. You want brass, look at an orchestral score, and this is what you'll see. The string score, the string part, is 10 pages long, and the brass part is 2 pages long. And they bring a magazine, and one of them counts for this time, and the next one counts for the next time. They trade off, and they come in and they go, boom, and then they start counting again, right? But that da-da-da in the context of the symphonic piece is just the right thing. So you can find, so for example, on Feed Us Lord, I would probably do something to the effect of, I would give them 4 parts on that last line, come and feed our hearts, O Lord, right? So you go through the song, and then that's the kind of the tag. But instead of tagging it like we did with the flute, now let's think creatively. Every time we go through it, the brass come in with bum 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 bum, and then our flute goes, right? So now we've gotten a little bit more mileage out of the music that's right there. We've created some interesting textures. We're not overusing any of the instruments. There's always a little bit of something new for the ear. And once again, the point is not just for ear candy. The point is that the congregation is singing 4 verses of this. And if we create some different musical things going on, then the congregation is given a little break, and they are reignited to sing again. Right? Rather than if you create this sameness, this kind of oatmeal sameness to all the instrumentations. You've heard it before, the praise band plays, the piano plays, the organ plays, they're all, and it becomes fatiguing, right? Because there's this sameness to it. Your voice becomes tired because there's no place for it to be supported and kind of pushed to the next thing. All right, so now, assume that we have brass in SATB. We have our parts, and we put them in SATB. You can also, this is so awesome. It's so much fun. This is fun. Every once in a while, you just need to geek out on some music theory. All right, so we're back to our thing. So don't worry about the doodads on that. We're back to our 3 parts here. This is too high for brass, but you get the basic idea. There are a thing called brass hits. Okay. And let's think of, trying to think of, Casey and the Sunshine Band. Once again, I'm throwing that in for free. Get Down Tonight, right? Think about the, you and me, right? That's a hit. So in pop music, you get a lot of that. And it works the same way as a desk can. You and me, bam, bam, da 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 da, right? And it fills in the lines. So you can make these lines. Let's say now instead of SATB of a hymn type of structure, you want to go to more of a praise band kind of thing. So let's say we want to do something with this. This is so much fun. Adam, give me your stuff, man. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these notes. Come on, get to that piano. We are going to go feed ba, us, ba. All right, so ba, ba. All right, so take a note. Where's our F? F, C, A. Let me hear that first note. Ba. All right, so we're gonna go ba, bottom. All right, 2, 3, 4. Ba, ba. Try it again. 3 and ba, ba. We just made a brass line. Isn't that awesome? So all the same thing, and this is the important thing to remember. It looks like magic when you look at a score. You look at all the instruments and you say, how does anybody write, all the 40 parts for all these different instruments? If you start to break it down, you can see, okay, these two solo instruments are doubling each other. The brass, strings, and woodwinds are all tutti at the same time. What time we have? 10:13. 2 minutes. Oh, let's bring this bad boy home. Woodwinds. Very atypical of pop music. It's usually when you get extra instruments in pop music, there are lots of precedents for, especially brass, in funk and soul and stuff like that. There's lots of precedents for strings, Eleanor Rigby and the Green Day's Time of My Life, all those kinds of things all have strings in them. Not a ton for woodwinds. They often are used for solo color, and which is totally fine to do that.
What are your, times at the?
Oh, that's just
Find
more
it.
to remind me where things start. So like if you want to listen to these, so for example, Sean Colvin's piece at minute 2:20, you're going to hear some woodwinds. At 2:40, the recorders will come in. And so it's just kind of a way to guide your listening on it. So those are things to listen to, and I think it's important to listen to a lot of music and get it in your ear how instruments work so that you can get them to sound natural. Full orchestra. I'll just, how many people have full orchestra in your church? Losers. Well, maybe someday the Lord will bless you with a full orchestra. I'll just spend a minute, our last minute, talking about some of those kinds of things. I already mentioned flex scores at henry.org, and so that's a really simple way to get multiple instruments playing together. Simple harmonizations, if you have it in finale, you can transpose it to whatever instrument you need. So what I often do, I have a thing called the Joyful Noise Orchestra. It's kind of a hodgepodge of instruments, and I try to patch together an SATB in each section, if I can, my brass, my winds. And then I just, on the fly, I assign them to, okay, strings are going to play the whole thing, brass are going to play the Alleluias, woodwinds, you come in on the melody here, that type of thing, to orchestrate it that way. Just realize that there are some resources for you. Two of the words hymnals, the celebration hymnal and hymnal for worship and celebration. I like the orchestrations on the hymnal for worship and celebration better, and you can get them fairly cheaply. It's still going to cost you $1,000 to outfit your whole group with them. I know it's a lot of money, but if you do have a bunch of, like a bunch of band instruments, kids that play in band and everything, I think it's worth the investment to invest in those.
Also buy the score by itself and then just transcribe individual parts.
Yeah, now I have not used these for a while, but I think that they do at Lifeway, I think they offer now digital versions of it, kind of like the Flex Score where you can buy them a la carte. So look around a little bit, you can find some of those things. Yeah. I won't go too much more into that. Does anybody have any final questions? We got to finish up, but.
Question,
Yeah.
is there an online resource for parts my wife plays the flute, and I have a ton of things that I've written for her, and we have 2 flute players or a violin player or whatever, and so I have a stable of things as well, but I'll often have people ask me if there's any place to find stuff online. for that kind of thing, where you have, you know, a string player, a flute player.
Yeah.
And, you know, I send my stuff to people all the time, but, you know, it's different arrangements, and so I don't know if there's any kind of place that has that obligato instrument, you know, for.
Yeah, unfortunately not, and part of the reason is copyright, you know, so you can, I won't tell it, you're sending these things to me. But if I were informant, I could tip them off. You're not supposed to. You know, so, you know, trading and be free to friends is probably fine, but you certainly couldn't make it available on the website. You'd get a cease and desist letter eventually. And so this is the problem, it has to be legit. Most modern groups, modern publishers, have one person who's made an arrangement, and they just don't see any reason to have more arrangements. They don't see the point of having an oboe part for their song, so they're just not, it's not worth their time financially. It's easier for them to have their lawyer send a cease and desist letter than to actually work with you on that. So unfortunately, you're not gonna get a lot of that. Praise charts is about the closest thing that you can do with that. The other thing you can do is you can retool existing arrangements. They have an arrangement for string quartet, and you put in flute. So learn your equivalents, right? If I've got a clarinet, I know that it's gonna be able to do a second violin or viola part fairly well. Know where it's going to sing, and just get a basic orchestration book, and you can get halfway there with that stuff. I'm sorry I have to stop now, but hopefully this gave you a little bit of something to get you started on some of these instruments. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.